also leads efforts to align Samsung's future U.S. memory portfolio with current technology trends and in-device user needs. Previously, he was at Dell, where he spent more than 6 years directing the brand management team in Dell's PC gaming business and expanding the Alienware business from 6 to 75 countries. That's their super high-end PCs and laptops for gamers. Jonathan also served in various engineering and manufacturing operational roles within Ford. So he has an MBA with high distinction from University of Michigan's Stephen M. Ross School of Business and a BSME degree from Rensselaer Polytech. Come on up.
Thank you. All right, are we all set with the mic? Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you attending here. Thank you to MemCon for having me. As Steve mentioned, Jonathan Chiswick with Samsung Electronics. And we're going to talk a little bit today about navigating the post-PC world. Yeah. You got to read fast. So first off, I'd like to start with a question. How many of you have a laptop with you here at MemCon and have been using it throughout the day? Okay. How about a tablet? How about a smartphone? All right. Well, that seems kind of about what I'd expect. For those of you who couldn't see the hands, there seemed to be 10 or 15 saying a laptop, 10 or 15 saying a tablet, and pretty much everybody saying a smartphone. So that leads into our topic today about post-PC. So what is post-PC? Right? Is it real? Why do we care? What should we do about it? Right? Well, I'd like to start off by answering one of those questions. Post-PC is real. Post-PC is not real. And I'm not trying to play both sides here, so let me explain. First, forget what you know about PCs. Traditionally, PC has meant personal computer. Now, the personal computer has been the hub of an individual's personal computing activities. This is where post-PC is true. Now, I'm not saying personal computer is going to fade away in the next year or even the foreseeable future. But what I am saying is that its reign as the nexus of an individual's personalized computing activities, those days are numbered. And what PC has become should mean personal computing. You know, a group of activities and processes that an individual does across multiple devices, none of which is necessarily more important than another. And this is where post-PC is not true, because personalized computing is exploding, right? And it's only going to continue to grow over the next coming decades. So one of the key points for today, what I'd like you all to remember is, right, the personal computing industry dynamics, they're changing. React or be disrupted. All right, what do I mean by that? So let's first start off with a high-level view of the computing industry. All right, going back to the days of the mainframe up until today with the mobile internet, devices have become more powerful, the size of the industry has grown, but personalization, the level of personalization of these devices and computing experiences has also increased. You know, we've gone from an era of centralized computing to computing in your home, to computing in your lap, to computing in your pocket, something you can take everywhere with you. Right? And that's where I see this third era, the personalization of computing. You know, we've come from yesterday where your device was something that was designed to be able to do, you know, everything you might possibly need, to today where your device is focused on trying to be the best at only what you need, when you need it. Right? So the right computing at the right time when you need it. So at the end of it all, which is more personal? All right, so what is personal computing? All right, we've seen some of these trends. What exactly are people doing with their personal computing devices? Well, lots of stuff. Everything from email down to video editing. Right? But I think these could be summarized into three main buckets: create, consume, and share. And we'll come back to those in a couple minutes. But what I'd like to do is take a look at the question of whether or not this transition, the personalization of computing, is something that's actually real. So like the canaries in the coal mines, right, the canaries that coal miners would take down with them to give them advance warning of danger, I think there's a number of signs that point to this transition taking place and that it is actually something that's real. Mobile devices, the fastest growing devices in history, outpacing PCs, MP3s, you name it. A number of different forecasts out there, taking just one NPD. It says 1 billion smartphones will be shipped in 2016, double where we are today. Mobile's the most pervasive technology ever. In case you can't read those numbers down there, mobile is the one far left, right, outpacing electricity, TVs, PCs, even safe drinking water. The average American household has 5 connected devices, and that's an average. There's a large number who have many more than that. All right, so consumers are fragmenting their computing activities and their personal computing activities across multiple devices. And a question that keeps coming up is, why would they be doing that? Right? A PC can already do all of that stuff. PC can do everything. It comes down to complexity. Right? When you design a device to be able to do anything that it might need to do, you need to increase complexity, which increases costs and decreases user adoption. For an example, this is a pretty tech savvy audience here. Think about all of the tech support types of questions you get from your friends and family, mostly due to complexity. 30% of tablet buyers use their PC less than they did before they had their tablet. On average, about 20% less. And why would they do that? Well, if you look at the types of activities that make up personal computing, personalized computing, what users want to do with that device, about 75% of that falls in the category of content consumption, right? Which we all know those devices, mobile devices, are very well designed for and are very good for consuming content. But that's not all those devices are for. You look at current tablet owners, 20% of them regularly use their mobile devices to both create and edit files. The 20% seems a little low, but think about the touch user interface, how intuitive it is. Give one of those devices, give a tablet, give a smartphone to a child, see how long it takes them to figure it out. And this is the devices that our kids are growing up with. This is what they're used to, what they're becoming accustomed to. It's just intuitive. And even for those of us a little older, the touch user interface is evolving to enable mobile to do more of these activities which traditionally have been done with other sorts of devices. So everything from photo editing, playing console games, even using productivity apps are becoming more and more practical with these mobile devices. Even something like typing, which I think everyone would agree, traditional typing on a tablet, not as easy on a keyboard. But looking at it a different way, there's an app that I've been using for a couple weeks which learns my patterns and what sort of words I use and predicts what I type. So I'm able to now, some sentences, 1 tap per word. I can type as fast on my smartphone as I can on a keyboard. So those sorts of things, those transitions are happening. So which one wins? Which device is going to win? Convenience wins. Which device is there for the user when and where they need it? So right computing at the right time. If it's available and it does what they need, that's the device they're going to use. I'll take a look at how much people are using their mobile devices and personalized computing. Right, there's all sorts of forecasts out there. You saw some this morning. One says 700 petabytes of mobile data a month is what's happening. There was a data point I saw this morning, 1.3 exabytes. It's big, right, and growing. About 2x each year, year over year. There's a forecast out there that shows 1,000x growth in mobile data traffic between now and 2020. Bottom line, it's big, people are using it a lot, only going to be using it more. 36% of all emails are opened on a mobile device. Right? That's up, continues to grow. About 60% of retailers have mobile shopping apps. Why would they do that? 15% of their online sales come from mobile. Seems like a pretty small number. It's double what it was last year. So we'd see that only growing. So what's next? To consider what's next in the future, take a look at some of the dynamics that impact many different technology markets. And this model is something that Clayton Christensen calls the Innovators Dilemma. What I'd like to call out on here, because there's a lot of lines, if you think about the axes, x-axis is time, y-axis is performance or experience, whatever you'd like to define it at for that particular market. The red lines represent different customer segments and matching up where they feel their needs are being met. Slightly increasing over time because most customers increase their expectations over time. The white lines represent what experience or performance is being delivered by different participants in that market. So you have a line at the top, which you might consider the incumbents, and their performance, what they deliver, increases year over year due to innovation, just natural progress. And typically at some point, they hit that blue dot where they start to exceed the needs of even their most profitable and high-end customers, which leaves them open to disruption from the bottom. And at some point, usually around the same time, there's that bottom white line, which is a new entrant. Typically comes out with the technology which is considered inferior, mostly because it doesn't meet the needs of the primary customers, that top red line. But similar to the incumbents, they continue to improve, continue to develop, and at some point, they may hit that yellow dot, where now that inferior technology is good enough for even the high-end customers, and they disrupt the incumbents. So make it a little more specific for the personal computing industry. I drew a graph up here for laptop and smartphone, right? Left off the time on the x-axis, and we can have some debate about the slopes of those lines. But if you assume that this is what the industry is in right now, you have smartphones growing at one rate, laptop performance growing at a different rate, and you'll have different yellow lines for each different customer segment. But if you just pick one and say that's the average customer and what performance they need in order to have the experience that they want, their personalized computing experience, at some point perhaps that red line could cross that yellow line, and then you'll see this disruption or this transition increase. And this dynamic is something that isn't necessarily restricted to just developed worlds or developing worlds. I see this, there's data that shows that it's across both, right? Even take the US for example. Over 30% of cell phone users who access the internet on their cell phone, for them, the cell phone is their primary means of accessing the web. You're looking at another data point, taking mobile share of data traffic. So within a country, what percent of the data traffic comes from mobile devices versus other devices? And 58% in Zimbabwe, right? All the way down, even top 5 is still 44%, so very high share. Right? Why would this be? Why are these customers picking mobile over sometimes something's available, sometimes it's not, but why are they choosing that? Well, one, it's convenient. Right? It better fits with their lifestyle, fits with their usage habits. And it's better than the alternatives. For some, the alternative is nothing, so mobile is what they choose. Other, it's just more convenient, so it's better, despite what another customer set might think would define better. So the near-term impact, if you think of those yellow lines, each customer segment is a yellow line, and there's a whole bunch of those, depending on how you segment that market. As we move forward, mobile's going to become good enough for more and more of those customer segments. Developing countries, I call it skip the PC. The analogy I use there is with telephones, telecommunications. The developed world, we went from nothing or telegraph to fixed landline phones to now mobile. That's not necessarily the cycle that developing countries go through, right? There may be no need to go to landlines. Why do you need that when you have a cell phone and it works just fine? Skipping over landlines. So in a similar vein, you'll see countries and customers skipping over the PC, going right to a mobile device and not seeing a need to ever have a PC. So combine that with a replacement cycle, which for mobile is about 2 years, PC about 4 years. You can do the math. It means an increasing cannibalization or shift of mobile devices replacing laptops. Again, not going to happen this year, not going to happen in the foreseeable future. Like, they're not going to go away, but that trend is continuing and will only continue to get bigger. Whoops. All right, so what about the future? Well, we're all going to be ruled by Cylons. No. I hope not, but let's not talk about that far in the future. A little closer in. So to think about the future, I'd like to look at a trend and one primary factor that has driven computing from the beginning. Right, so Professor Kumi at Stanford has done some research. We went back to the beginning of computing in the 1940s and looked at compute efficiency, so computing power efficiency, compute per watt, and found that it's a fairly, it's a logarithmic line, but fairly straight. And it's about a 100x increase every decade. We already also looked at what new technologies are out there and what the industry feels progress could be, and the thought is that this trend could continue for the next couple decades. All right, so if you assume that that's going to continue, what sort of devices can result? Right, this is the reason that things like laptops, your cell phone, your tablets were able to be created, because the efficiency, the compute was able to be put into smaller and smaller devices that needed smaller and smaller batteries. Right, so if you go another 100x, what does that mean? What sort of devices could be created by that? What sort of industries could be disrupted? And that's the question that I pose to everyone here, and I think that would be important for us to look at and answer. All right, so one of the trends this is going to drive is an increasing proliferation of devices, both numbers of devices, more of what we have, but then also more of different kinds of devices. So some things that are out there today, Fitbit, health devices, other little smaller things, and things that you can't even imagine today. All of which will enable more personalized computing, again, right computing at the right time when you need it. All right, so if you think of today's personalized computing ecosystem, laptop, desktop, smartphone, tablet, and then think about tomorrow's. Right, these are some of the things that have been proposed. Some are out in the marketplace. Things that we know about or would expect would probably be in the market in the coming years. But there's a whole group of additional ones that we probably haven't even thought of yet. So it's just going to continue to proliferate and become more personal. So let's get into memory. Right? So what about memory? Well, thinking about what that ecosystem needs, if you have an ecosystem with a whole bunch of increasing number of smaller devices, they need connectivity, low power use, and then there's also got to be computing power on the back end in the cloud. And what like Jim talked about this morning, right? Efficient cloud computing. As more and more compute goes in the back end, there's concerns about power consumption. He threw out a data point that was in a recent article. In less than 20 years, 10% of the Pacific Northwest power could be used by the data centers that are being built there. Right, so it's an issue that, as the memory industry, should consider how we could impact that and affect that and grow our business that way. Looking at devices, lower power, right? As devices get smaller, they're going to need to use less power, smaller battery, potentially even no battery. Are there ways to absorb energy from ambient sources? These are the sorts of things that we should start considering, if that's even possible. Right? And small form factor. And I think you're going to see more more segments of devices fall into the category where they need to hit a good enough performance threshold and not increase it at increase performance at the expense of power efficiency or form factor, because those criteria start to become more important for those segments. So bottom line, we'll come back to, the only thing that stays the same in the technology industry is that things are going to change, right? So what the dynamics that have driven success in the past are not necessarily going to be the dynamics that drive success in the future. And something that we all should be looking at is, what does that mean for our particular industry, our particular company, our particular market in the future, and how can we position ourselves to be successful in that new world?
Are there any questions?
So, lots of questions.
Raise your hand. I'll come put the mic in front of you. No questions.
All right.
Okay. Well, could you speak a little bit more about memory and the types of memory that can react to these challenges? Because you kind of went right through it, but maybe you'd like to talk about that, since Samsung has got a finger in pretty much every memory technology that there is.
Right. Well, these dynamics are something that are being considered when we look at what new memory technologies might grow in the future, and where one memory type might transition to another memory type. Not going to be too specific for obvious reasons, but thinking about what the devices are, what the ecosystem is in the future, should drive your decisions for where you need to be positioned today, so you have the right components that can enable those future usage models. So as far as types of memory, right? I mean, look at the types of memory you have today that you produce. Just DRAM and NAND for two examples. Will those enable those sorts of activities and those sorts of devices? Maybe, maybe not. If so, how can they do that, or how might you change it? Or if not, what might, right? So, I mean, from Samsung's perspective, we look at everything. Okay.
Here's a question.
Yes, my question is about NAND flash and scaling. We think that many people here probably share the opinion that floating gate may be difficult to do beyond 20 nanometers. So can you talk to that?
Not to that specifically. I think that's probably outside where I'd call myself an expert. But one thing that I would look at, it's a dynamic not just across NAND, but across different memory technologies. Right? Every one of them is getting harder and harder and more expensive. The smaller you get and the more complex the process gets. At what point does that exceed what your customers are willing to pay for that? And that's something that everyone should consider when they're determining whether they should move forward with the new technology or not.
I have a quick question. You gave example of cell phones and PCs, where cell phones are changing every 2 years and PCs every 4 years. That's mainly because it's the AT&T and the Verizon of the world giving you 2-year contracts, that every 2 years your phone becomes free, then you go and get another one for. So do you envision something like that happening in the PC world, that Dell and HP comes out with some kind of killer app, and they'll say, well, every 2 years you come and get your old PC and we'll give you a new PC?
Maybe. I think it depends on what that killer app is, and is it something that they'd be willing to give up the smartphone or the tablet for? As far as using that same sort of model for laptops, netbooks, you name it, Dell, HP, other companies have tried that, not very successfully. So if it was to be tried again today, I think it would still come down to, the device, right? Is it, I want a smartphone, I want a laptop, do I want this one? Am I willing to not, I don't need that one as much, so do I only want this? If there's some great new device, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a lot of smart people working on it. And if there was, then that could be a good model.
Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for an excellent talk.
Thank you.
So we're now running ahead of time. And instead of, I don't want to start early because